When my grandmother died, my cousin walked away with the downtown property and the investment accounts. I got a broken-down cabin at the edge of a lake nobody visited anymore. My husband didn't even wait until we got to the car. He laughed right there in the parking lot of the lawyer's office. He said, "I always knew your family liked her more." Then he said the words I will never forget. "You bring nothing to this marriage." Nothing. That night, I drove to the cabin alone. And what I found inside changed everything. Before I tell you what it was, make sure you subscribe. Because this story is not what anyone expected, especially my husband. My name is Claire. I am 32 years old. I have one daughter named Lily, who is 6, and I have spent the last 4 years convincing myself that my marriage was fine. That my husband was just stressed. That things would get better once his business picked up. That the way he talked to me behind closed doors was not who he really was. My grandmother, Nora, was 81 when she passed. She lived in the same small town in upstate New York her entire life. She raised 3 children, buried 1 husband, and ran a garden that the whole neighborhood talked about every summer. She was quiet and careful and deliberate about everything she did. She never wasted a word or a dollar or a Tuesday afternoon. My cousin Rachel was her favorite. Everyone knew it. Rachel was sharp and loud and confident in the way I always wished I could be. She called my grandmother every Sunday. She visited on holidays. She brought flowers and wine and knew how to fill a room. I loved Rachel. I also spent most of my life standing slightly behind her. So when the lawyer read the will, no one was surprised that the downtown commercial property went to Rachel. The building had 3 tenants and generated steady monthly income. Her husband grabbed her hand when the lawyer said her name. They both smiled like they had been waiting. Then the lawyer said my name. "The Holloway Lake cabin and the surrounding land parcel will go to Claire." Silence. Then someone at the table coughed. My aunt shifted in her chair. Rachel looked at me with an expression she tried to make kind, but wasn't quite. My husband, Derek, said nothing. He just stared at the table. The cabin had been empty for 11 years. I had been there once as a child. I remembered a screen door that didn't close all the way and a smell like old books and lake water. I remembered my grandmother sitting on the porch in the evening, watching the water like it was telling her something. In the parking lot after, Derek walked fast to the car. I had to keep up with him. Lily held my hand and asked if we were going somewhere fun. I told her maybe. Inside the car, he didn't start the engine right away. He sat there with both hands on the wheel. "Your cousin gets an income property," he said. "You get a shack." "It's lakefront," I said. "That has value." He turned to look at me. 11 years empty, Claire. The roof is probably caved in. There's no road, there's no power. He shook his head. "You bring nothing to this marriage. Nothing. Every time I think things might turn around, your family finds a new way to make sure they don't." I looked out the window. Lily was quiet in the back seat. He started the car and drove home without saying another word. That night, after Lily was asleep, I stood in the kitchen and thought about what he said. Not just the words. The way he said them. Flat. Like it was simply true. Like he had stopped trying to be cruel about it and was just stating facts now. I had heard versions of that sentence for 4 years. You don't contribute, you're not practical. You're soft, you overthink. You don't understand money. Once, after a dinner with his business partners, he told me I embarrassed him. I had asked one of them a question about their work because I was genuinely curious. He said I made him look bad. I stood in that kitchen for a long time. Then I picked up my keys. I told myself I just wanted to see it, that I wasn't running. I left a note on the counter that said I went to check on the property, be back tomorrow. I packed a bag for myself and one for Lily in case she woke up early and worried. Then I changed my mind and brought Lily with me. I didn't want to leave her there. She fell asleep in the car seat 20 minutes into the drive. The highway was quiet. The GPS took me off the main road and onto a county route I had never been on. Trees on both sides. No streetlights. Just headlights and dark. When I turned onto the lane that led to the cabin, gravel popped under the tires. The lane was narrow but passable. Someone had maintained it, or at least kept it from completely disappearing. The cabin came into view in my headlights. It was smaller than I remembered. Wood siding, dark with age. A wide porch facing the lake. The screen door my grandmother used to let bang in the wind. The porch light was off, obviously, but the structure looked intact. No caved-in roof, no collapsed walls. I carried Lily inside and found the bedroom at the back of the cabin. The mattress was covered in an old quilt. I laid Lily down and covered her, and she didn't even stir. Then I stood alone in the main room. The smell was the same as I remembered. Old wood and lake air and something faintly herbal, like dried lavender or rosemary, one of my grandmother's things. There was a small lamp on a side table. I found a match in the kitchen drawer and lit the oil lamp because I did not know if the power was connected. It was. When I tried the wall switch, the overhead light buzzed to life. Dim, but working. I sat down in the armchair by the window and looked out at the lake. There was enough moonlight to see the surface of the water. It was still, completely still. I thought about the will. I thought about my grandmother sitting in this chair, looking at this same water. She had left this to me specifically, not to my mother, not split between family. To me, by name, with the Lillian parcel attached. I did not think she made mistakes. I got up and started looking around. I don't know exactly what I was looking for. Maybe I just needed to do something with my hands. I opened cabinets in the kitchen, old dishes, canned goods, a coffee tin. I checked the bathroom. I looked in the closet by the front door. Coats, boots, a folded rain slicker. Then I went to the small room off the main hall that my grandmother had used as a study. A desk. A bookshelf, a filing cabinet. I sat down at the desk. The top drawer had pens, rubber bands, a small calendar from 4 years ago. The second drawer had folders of old utility bills and handwritten grocery lists. The third drawer was locked. I tried every key on the ring the lawyer had given me. The third one worked. Inside the drawer was a large manila envelope, sealed and labeled in my grandmother's handwriting. The label said one word. Clear. My hands went still. I held the envelope for a moment without opening it. The lamp on the desk was warm. Outside, the lake was quiet. I could hear Lily breathing from the back room. My grandmother had known what she was doing. She always did. I opened the envelope. Inside were several items. A folded letter, handwritten on her stationery with the small blue flowers in the corner that I had seen my whole life. A printed land survey with the property marked in red. 2 sealed envelopes, one from a county office and one from a company I had never heard of, called Meridian Land Group. And a small index card with a name and phone number written on it, with a note underneath that said, "Call him first." His name was Arthur Simmons. Below his name, my grandmother had written attorney, real estate. Trustworthy. I unfolded her letter last. "Claire," she wrote, "if you are reading this, then I am gone and you have found your way to the cabin. Good. That means you did not give up." I put the letter down for a moment. I pressed my hands flat on the desk and breathed. I picked it up again. "I need you to understand something before you read anything else. I did not give you the cabin because it was all that was left. I gave it to you because of what it is about to become. Your cousin is practical and capable, and she will do well with what she has. But this land requires patience and a person who pays attention. That has always been you. You have always been the one who reads before she acts, who waits until she understands. I have watched you your whole life, and I know what you are capable of, even when you do not know it yourself." I covered my mouth with one hand. The county approved a regional trail and waterfront development project 18 months ago. The back portion of this property sits directly along the designated corridor. I have received multiple offers from developers, all of which I declined. Not because the offers were not serious, because the timing was not right. The project was still in planning stages. Once construction begins, this land will be worth more than anything in my estate. I read that paragraph twice. There is a man named Arthur Simmons. Call him before you do anything else. Before you tell anyone what you have found. He knows the situation. He has been advising me for 2 years. He helped me draft the protection language in the deed. He will walk you through everything. I looked at the index card with his number. I want you to know one more thing, she wrote. The cabin is yours regardless of what you decide to do with the land. The lake is yours. The porch and the evenings and the sound of the water. I spent 40 years sitting on that porch. It is the place I was most myself. I am giving it to the person I trust most to understand why that matters. I love you, Claire. I always have. More than I said out loud. That was my failing, not yours. Your grandmother, Nora. I sat at that desk for a long time. I did not cry immediately. I just held the letter and listened to the lake and thought about my grandmother sitting in this same chair, writing this letter, knowing she was leaving, knowing what she was leaving behind. Then I did cry. Quietly, so I would not wake Lily. I did not open the envelopes from the county or the developer that night. I put everything carefully back into the manila envelope, sealed it, and placed it in my bag. Then I went to the back room and lay down next to my daughter and stared at the ceiling. I thought about what my husband had said in the parking lot. You bring nothing to this marriage. I thought about my grandmother's handwriting on the label. Just my name. Claire. I fell asleep listening to the water. In the morning, Lily woke up confused and then delighted when she saw the lake through the window. We ate crackers and peanut butter from my bag, and she asked if we could go outside. We walked down to the water's edge. It was cool and clear, and the tree line on the far side reflected perfectly on the surface. Lily picked up a stone and threw it in and watched the rings spread outward. Mom, she said, is this ours? I looked at her. Yes, I said. This is ours. She thought about that for a moment. Then she picked up another stone. On the drive home, I called Arthur Simmons from the road. He answered on the second ring. His voice was measured and professional. When I told him my name, he said he had been expecting my call. He told me to come to his office at my earliest convenience. He said not to discuss the property with anyone until we had spoken. Not family, not a spouse. He said those words carefully, and I understood why. I went to see him 2 days later while Lily was at school. His office was small and organized. He had a copy of the same survey my grandmother had left me. He had the correspondence from Meridian Land Group and from 2 other development companies. He had notes from his conversations with my grandmother going back 26 months. He walked me through everything methodically. The regional trail project had been in planning for 3 years. The back acreage of the cabin property sat along the designated waterfront access corridor. When the trail was completed, that stretch of lakefront would become a key connector between 2 county parks. The commercial zoning implications were significant. He said the word significant the way careful people say it when they mean extraordinary. 3 developers had submitted formal interest letters to my grandmother. The highest offer in the correspondence was substantial, but Arthur told me it was likely a floor, not a ceiling. He said construction on the trail infrastructure was already beginning at the northern end. He said the property would likely increase in value over the next 18 months. He also told me what my grandmother had already told me. File nothing, say nothing, change nothing about your life until you understand your legal position. He said inheritance is separate property under New York law. It cannot be divided as a marital asset in divorce proceedings, provided it is kept separate and not commingled with joint finances. I asked him if he could recommend a family attorney. He smiled like he had been waiting for that question too. I left his office with a referral and a plan. I called the family attorney that afternoon. Her name was Patricia. She was direct and did not waste time. She explained my options clearly. She told me what to document and what not to sign. She told me that any major financial decisions should wait until my legal position was clear. I walked out of her office feeling something I had not felt in a long time. I felt like I was standing on solid ground. I did not tell Derek about any of it. He had been calmer since the night in the parking lot. Not kind, exactly, but quiet. He asked once if I had been to see the cabin. I said yes. He asked if it was as bad as he expected. I said it needed some work. He nodded and went back to his phone. That was the end of the conversation. I kept my voice normal. My expression ordinary. I cooked dinner, helped Lily with her reading, went to bed, woke up, and did it again. 2 weeks after my visit to Arthur's office, Meridian Land Group reached out. They had found my contact information through the county deed transfer records. A man named James called and introduced himself as a project acquisitions manager. He said they had been in contact with the previous owner and understood there had been a change in ownership. I said yes. He said they remained very interested in discussing the property. He said the corridor development was progressing faster than originally scheduled. He asked if I would be available to meet. We scheduled a meeting for the following Thursday. I told no one. Thursday came. I drove to the cabin early and walked the property again before they arrived. The back acreage sloped gently down toward the water and opened into a wide flat section where the old dock had been. You could see clearly how a trail access point would work there. You could picture exactly where the parking and the footpath and the waterfront platform would go. My grandmother had walked this land for 40 years. She had known. James arrived with a colleague and a site engineer. They were professional and thorough. They did not make the mistake of underestimating the property or the person who owned it. They walked the back acreage, took measurements, photographed the shoreline. Then we sat at the table on the porch. James said the trail construction contract had been awarded and ground would break in the spring. He said the corridor access points along the lake were the highest priority parcels in the development plan. He said there had been significant commercial interest in the section nearest this property. Then he said, "We would like to make you a formal offer today." He placed a folder on the table. I opened it. I had known a number was coming. Arthur had prepared me. Patricia had prepared me. I thought I was ready. I was not entirely ready. The number on the page was more than Derek's business had made in the last 6 years combined. It was more than our mortgage balance and our car loans and every bill we owed in the world, and then considerably more after all of that. And Arthur had told me it was a floor. I told them I would need 10 days to review with my attorney. James said of course. He seemed unsurprised. He left his card and thanked me for my time. After they drove away, I sat on the porch for a long time. The lake was doing the same thing it always did. Still and clear and indifferent to everything happening around it. I thought about my grandmother sitting here in the evenings. I thought about Derek in the parking lot. Nothing. You bring nothing. I thought about Lily throwing a stone and watching the rings. Then I went inside and called Patricia. That weekend, Rachel called to check in. Her voice had the warm, slightly careful quality it always had when she was managing me. She asked about the cabin. She asked if I had been able to see it. She said she knew it was not the most exciting inheritance, but that lakefront could have some value eventually, if I was patient. I said yes, I thought so too. She told me the first tenant of her building had just renewed their lease at a higher rate. She was happy. Her husband was looking at expanding the lease to the second floor. Things were good. I said I was glad. After the call, I sat with my phone in my hand. Rachel was not a bad person. She had never been deliberately cruel. She had just always been in front of me, and I had always let her be. 10 days later, I called James at Meridian. I told him I had reviewed the offer with my attorney. I told him I had 2 conditions. First, I would sell the back acreage for the trail corridor, but I would retain ownership of the cabin and the immediate lakefront. Second, the sale would include a revenue-sharing agreement tied to the commercial development that occurred adjacent to the access point over the following 10 years. There was a pause. James said he would need to bring this to his team. He called back the next morning. He said they could work with those terms. 3 weeks later, Patricia filed the paperwork. Arthur reviewed the final documents. I signed on a Tuesday afternoon in a conference room that smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner, and when it was done, I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive. I called my mother that evening. She was the first person I told. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Your grandmother always said you were the patient one." I had dinner with Rachel on Saturday. We went to the same restaurant where our family had celebrated holidays for years, the one with the dark wood booths and the candles on the tables. It was her suggestion. She said she wanted to catch up properly. She looked relaxed, confident. She talked about the building, the tenants, her husband's plans for the second floor. She asked about Derek's business. She asked about Lily's school year. Then she asked about the cabin. "How is the property?" she said. "Have you figured out what to do with it?" I took a sip of water. I said I had actually just finalized something. She looked up. "Really? What did you do?" "I sold a portion of the land," I said, "to a development group." She tilted her head. "Like, for how much?" I told her the number. She put her fork down. I kept my voice even. I told her about the trail corridor, the commercial zoning, the revenue share. I did not say it to hurt her. I said it clearly and factually because she had asked. She stared at me. "That's more than my building is worth," she said finally. "I know," I said. She shook her head slowly. "Did you know about this when grandmother passed?" "No," I said. "I found out after." She was quiet. Then she said, "Grandmother knew?" "She planned it," I said. "She waited for the right time and she left it to the right person." Rachel looked at the candle on the table. I could not entirely read her face. There was something working through it. Surprise. Maybe. Recalibration. I did not think it was jealousy exactly. I think it was the first time she had ever had to adjust her understanding of where we stood. I do not say that with satisfaction. I say it because it was true and because it mattered to me after a lifetime of standing slightly behind her. I told Derek when I got home. He was on the couch watching television. I sat down across from him and I said I needed to tell him about the cabin property. He muted the television. His face was already doing something cautious, like he could feel the ground shifting without knowing which direction. I told him about the trail corridor, about Meridian, about the sale. He went very still. I showed him the summary Patricia had prepared. He read it twice. He looked up at me. His expression was not anger. It was not contempt. It was something I had never seen from him before. It was shock, and underneath the shock there was something smaller and quieter that I recognized after a moment as embarrassment. "You knew about this," he said. "For how long?" "A few weeks," I said. "You didn't tell me." "No," I said. He set the papers down. "Why?" I looked at him for a long time. I thought about the parking lot, about the kitchen, about 4 years of versions of the same sentence. I thought about the fact that the moment I had found something real and important in mine, every instinct I had said to protect it first and explain later. "Because I needed to understand it first," I said. "And I needed to make sure it was protected before I told anyone." He understood what I meant by anyone. I could see it land. We sat there in the living room, and the television was muted and Lily was asleep down the hall, and neither of us pretended the conversation was only about a real estate transaction. I filed for divorce 6 weeks later. I had already talked to Patricia about it. She helped me understand exactly what was mine and what was not. The inheritance was protected, the sale proceeds were separate. What we had built together in the marriage was divided cleanly and fairly. I did not want to punish him. I wanted to be done. He did not call me useless again. He did not laugh. He was quieter in those final weeks than I had ever known him to be, and I think somewhere underneath everything he understood that the ground had shifted in a way that could not be walked back. Lily handled it the way 6-year-olds handle things when adults are calm and clear and honest. She asked questions. I answered them. She cried once, at bedtime, and I held her until she fell asleep. She asked if we could still go to the cabin. I told her we could go whenever we wanted. It was ours. We drove up on the first weekend of November. The leaves had mostly come down, and the lake was that deep flat gray it gets in late autumn. We brought blankets and groceries and Lily's art supplies. She sat at the kitchen table and drew pictures of the water while I made soup. In the late afternoon, we sat on the porch. The air was cold and clean. The lake was perfectly still. Lily leaned against me under the blanket. "Mom," she said, "do you like it here?" I looked out at the water. My grandmother had looked at this same water for 40 years. She had written me a letter at this desk and sealed it and trusted me to find it. She had spent a lifetime paying attention, and then she had given the things she understood best to the person she trusted most to understand it. "Yes," I said. I really do. A crew had started preliminary survey work on the back acreage the week before. I had driven out to watch for a few minutes. Men with equipment and orange vests moving through the trees. The beginning of something. In the spring, the trail would break ground. By next fall, the access point would be framed. The commercial parcels along the corridor were already attracting attention from hotel groups and a regional restaurant chain. Arthur had sent me a summary of preliminary interest inquiries. The revenue share clause Patricia had negotiated was going to matter more than I had originally understood. My grandmother had looked at this water and planned all of it. She had declined offer after offer and waited and watched and passed it to the one person she believed would not act until she understood what she was holding. I had almost not read the letter that night. I had sat at the desk with the sealed envelope in my hands and been afraid of finding nothing. That the motel, the cabin, the land, all of it would add up to exactly what everyone said it was. Small, worthless. What you give to the person who doesn't matter enough to get the real thing. My grandmother had known that fear was there. She had written to it directly. She had said, "I know what people will think. Let them think it." A heron came in low over the water and settled on a dead branch near the far bank. Lily pointed at it and whispered so she wouldn't scare it away. "Look," she said. "I know," I said. "I see it." The bird was still and patient and completely certain of where it stood. We stayed until the light was almost gone, and the cold came up from the water in a way that meant it was time to go inside. Lily ran ahead, and I sat for one more minute on the porch in the dark with the blanket around my shoulders. Derek had once told me I brought nothing to the table. He had been looking at the wrong table. I got up and went inside to where my daughter was waiting.